Good afternoon. My name is Jim Noteware, the host of our program here today. I'm very pleased to introduce you to my friend that we're going to have a conversation with. My friend is Orlando Sanchez. Orlando is a candidate for controller of the city of Houston. Orlando has a long history of public service in Houston and in Harris County. I'm going to ask him to speak about that in a few minutes. But it's very important today that Orlando outline for all of us the nature of the importance of the controller's office, what he plans to do when he is elected controller of the city of Houston, and where he hopes the city can go from here. But before we get into all of that, Orlando is a very special person. He and his background are a great example of what many people watching this show also are, an immigrant from a very foreign country who has come to the United States because of danger in his homeland, and who has grown up here and become a very successful American story as a citizen. In fact, Orlando, if you don't mind, let's start there. Let's talk about how you came to the United States, why you came, and what you see the importance of the United States and particularly the city of Houston is to our great future.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's good to be with the community. And yes, I came to Houston as an immigrant in 1962. My family came here. I was born in Havana, Cuba in 1957, and we left the island in 1959. And then lived in Caracas, Venezuela for about 2 years, and then came to Houston in 1962. In fact, Jim, when I came to Houston, Loop 610 was not even built. And so I went to school here. I didn't speak English. My first language was Spanish. But I went to the public schools, graduated from Bel Air High School, and then I joined the United States Air Force. And when I came home, I went to the University of Houston and earned my degree. And in 1995, I became one of the few immigrants ever elected to the City Council of Houston. I was the first Hispanic, Latino immigrant elected to City Council, but I had the honor of serving with my dear friend Martha Wong and Gordon Kwan. Back when our city council was very diverse. We had a lot of people of different backgrounds on the city council. I served on the city council of Houston for 6 years between 1995 and 2001. And in 2001, I ran for mayor of Houston, and it's still a very historic race in Houston history because more people voted in the runoff than voted in the general election, and that's never happened in Houston. And I ran for mayor again in 2003. And then 12 years ago, I was elected county treasurer for Harris County. Harris County is the third largest county in the United States. And it was a real honor that I got elected again as the first immigrant Hispanic elected county-wide in Harris County. And now, Jim, I'm running for city controller of the city of Houston. City controller is a very important position. Just like the mayor, the city controller is elected by the people. And the city controller reports on the finances of our city. Our city budget is about $5.5 billion every year. And so the job of the city controller is to audit all of the departments in the city of Houston. For example, the police department, the fire department, public works and engineering, the libraries, the airport, and so on. And in addition to that, the city controller pays all the bills for the city of Houston, makes all of the deposits into our checking account, borrows all the money that the city of Houston needs to borrow, and makes the investments that the city needs to make. So it's a very important position. It's a financial position, and it serves as a financial watchdog for the taxpayers.
Most important part. That's the most important part.
Right.
Let's talk about that for just a moment. What do you consider, by the way, Orlando is perfectly well qualified to serve here. given his background as a city council person and as his background in managing the finances of Harris County as well as 12 years as Harris County treasurer. So looking forward now, what do you see, Orlando, as the critical issues facing the city of Houston, and what do you propose to do as controller?
Well, Jim, the most important issue facing the city is the fact that we don't have a bright financial future in the city of Houston. And I say that because, as you know, the City Hall will tell us that the budget is balanced. Yes, that may be true, but that would be like me saying that my income in my house is $50,000 a year, and my expenses are $75,000 a year. That means I have a $25,000 operating deficit that year. Last year, the city of Houston had an operating deficit of $435 million. Now, what happens is when we are short and when we spend more money than we take in, we have to go to the bank or we have to charge things on our credit cards. So we go into debt. And that's what's happening in the city of Houston. Our debt keeps climbing every year. Our community takes on more debt. The debt is guaranteed by your property. You pay two ways to the city of Houston. You pay property taxes and you pay sales taxes. And so as the city of Houston's debt grows, it is guaranteed by your property. And I tell you that because the city of Houston borrows money just like you and I would have to borrow money when we're a little short. The city borrows money by issuing bonds. They're called municipal bonds. And there are two types of municipal bonds. One is the general obligation bonds, and those are guaranteed by your house, your property, and your business. Everybody that pays property taxes is guaranteeing those bonds. And so that's the danger, is that we get too much debt in the future and we cannot sustain that debt. And beyond that, Jim, one of the problems in the city of Houston is that we're not doing sufficient audits to find out if the departments are running efficiently. And let me give you an example. The largest department in the city of Houston is the police department. And the police department's annual budget is about $740 million every year. And the police department has not been audited since 2011. That means that we have gone almost 8 years without an audit of the largest department in the city of Houston. And if you add up $740 million times 8 years, that's a little over $5 billion of tax money that has gone through the police department. And we don't know if they're operating efficiently and how that money is being spent. That's why audits are important in a business. So I'm on the board of directors of a bank. And we're constantly audited. You're a business person. You know the importance of audits. And so audits are important to tell you how well your business is running. And we cannot have a city that has no audits.
Exactly right. Back to your point about not being able to sustain the level of debt. I had a conversation with a person 4 or 5 years ago about the city of Houston and the distinction of balancing budget. And I said, imagine two spouses sitting across the kitchen table. And one said, you know, you've been making a lot more money lately, but we've been spending a lot more. Did you balance the checkbook? And the other spouse said, yes, I did. And the first spouse said, how did you do it? He said, well, it's very simple. I emptied our savings account. I sold the car. I refinanced the house, and I stopped paying on grandma's nursing home. And the first spouse said, wow, that's very interesting. What are we going to do next month?
Right.
And that's where we sit as the city of Houston. People use the term kick the can down the road. In other words, the problem is so big that no politician is willing to tackle it. So you kick the can down the road for future politicians to deal with it. The problem is, we're very close to the end of the road. And what Orlando said about the importance of the general obligation bonds being secured by our property, if and when the city cannot make the payments on those bonds, like you could not make the payment on your credit card, what happens then? Then the bondholders come through the courts and they compel a property tax increase. And that would be a very severe penalty for the city of Houston.
Right.
And all of us. as
Right,
taxpayers.
and it does happen. There
does
are
happen.
there are American cities that have unfortunately had to declare bankruptcy, essentially, and this happened recently in Detroit. New York City had some financial difficulties many years ago. Orange County, California, and there have been other cities that have come to the brink, if not over the edge, and had to file bankruptcy. And it's unfortunate because that debt burden falls on our children and our grandchildren. You know, Jim and I, well, we may not be around, for another 50, 60 years, but our children will be here and our grandchildren will be here. And it's important to run the finances of a major city like Houston in a very professional and a very balanced way. And the only way to do that is to ensure your departments are running efficiently. The only way to know if your departments are running efficiently is to conduct audits in the city of Houston. And unfortunately, they're not being conducted.
Let me ask you a question. This is a very, very significant set of issues, not just one issue, but many, many issues together. Why do you think the current controller and prior controllers have not conducted sufficient audits, and the ones that they have done have not been done?
Many people believe that the city controller is a net, and so they would rather be silent than to expose the abuse and where the tax dollars are being misapplied.
About corruption in the mayor's race, those audits. What do you think we may find this may lead?
Well, first of all, Jim, I have been very focused on the race for city controller, but I am aware that the citizens are complaining. For example, many years ago, after the bad flooding that we have in this city, the city of Houston, with voter approval, because the voters voted for this, created what's called the drainage fee, or the tax that is put on our water bill. That tax was supposed to be used to improve the infrastructure to be able to handle more water in the right-of-way, in streets, and heavy rains. And in that charter amendment, that vote that we gave the city to go ahead and authorize that extra tax, we said that no more than 25% of that tax can be used for maintenance. 75% of that tax had to be used to build new infrastructure for drainage in the city of Houston. Right now, the city is violating that clause in the contract because they're expending over 35 to 40% on maintenance. And so that means that leaves less money for the infrastructure improvements. And the city is taking the excess money and putting it into the general fund to cover operating expenses, which should not be done.
So really what I interpret you saying is the citizens voted to assess themselves a new fee. That fee has been charged to people, but it is being misused. And one of the ways it's being misused is, instead of paying for drainage, which is what the voters thought they were buying with this fee, it has been used to prop up, in effect, the deficit that's been incurred by artificially high payroll expenses. So we're not getting what we paid for, what we anticipated to get, including drainage. Had we been getting improved drainage improvements, perhaps the consequences of Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Imelda would not have been so severe. Yeah. So this is a real cost and a real problem for the city of Houston when people misspend the money.
Correct. And And then there's another issue that has been brought up through the news media. Channel 26 in Houston, the Houston Chronicle, and several others reported that the current city controller was using the office to arrange financing for a piece of real estate that he owned. I'm not saying it's illegal, but it certainly was unethical because he sold a piece of real estate to a developer. The developer borrowed the money from the city of Houston through housing dollars and what's called federal home money that's administered through the city of Houston's housing department. The problem is that this current controller did not disclose to the mayor or to the city council before they voted $5.6 million of public money that it was Mr. Brown's property. And so now we have the city controller being investigated by the Office of Inspector General of the City of Houston. To me, Jim, that is a violation of the public trust. You send the city controller to City Hall to watch over your money, not to arrange deals for himself, especially when Houstonians were hurting and needed Harvey funds. And the City of Houston has done a poor job in getting the federal funds and the applications approved so that citizens can get the federal money to repair their homes after the flood of Harvey.
And the misbehavior that Orlando is citing regarding the current controller is very, very significant, because under normal circumstances, if some other city employee misbehaved in this way, the current controller would conduct an audit and find that misbehavior. In this case, he would be auditing himself.
Correct.
Which is like a double misbehavior. There are many other aspects of this that we could and perhaps should discuss, but I wanted to get on to another topic that you alluded to, Orlando, and that is, we talk about financial audits. What about something considered a performance audit? In private business, there are external audits, like you have been talking about, where someone will come in and audit a financial performance. But there are also internal audits that look at the performance. For instance, you mentioned police. Mm-hmm. And we all look at the financial efficiency of the police department. We can talk about, and many of us have observations, that the police department is woefully inefficient. It's way behind in technology. It's way behind in its use of preventative crime prevention techniques. Its coverage ratio, that is the percentage of crimes that it solves, are very low. But if we go back into recent history and look at that busted drug raid, people exceeded their authority. Many people misrepresented things in advance of that, and 2 innocent civilians were shot to death by policemen.
Yes.
And the policemen shot each other as friendly fire when they went into that house. Does the controller of the city have the right to conduct performance audits of a major entity like the police department to assess the controls in place to make sure that they are functioning appropriately?
Yeah, Jim, the answer is yes. According to the city charter, which is the equivalent of the city constitution, the city controller has the authority to audit the departments. And part of the departments need to be audited for, as Jim said, performance audits. Can they do things more efficiently? Can they do things better? Is there, for example, the raid that Jim talks about was the Tuttle family in East Houston about 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago, in which the police falsified warrants. They called them no-knock warrants. That means the police can just bust into your house, and that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, there are some questions about some fraudulent activity within the Houston Police Department. That case is now in federal court. And if the city it is the opinion of a jury that the City of Houston Police Department was wrong and violated the Tuttle family constitutional rights, it will cost us, the taxpayers of Houston, millions and millions of dollars, because typically a city, a municipality, is immune from lawsuits under a theory called sovereign immunity. Cities and governments typically in this country cannot be sued because, for example, if a garbage truck gets in an accident, which they do a lot, imagine if all the citizens were suing the city of Houston, we would go broke. The only time that a citizen can sue a government is when their constitutional rights have been violated. And the Tuttle's constitutional rights are in question right now in federal district court in the Southern District of Texas. If the city is found to be at fault, we, the taxpayers, Jim, are going to have to pay millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars in this case.
I think the conversation that we have had over the last few minutes demonstrates the significance of the importance of the controller function in the city of Houston and how much danger the city of Houston, and by extension the citizens of the city of Houston, are in because of misbehavior by officials in mayor's office, in the largest and most significant departments, public works, police, other departments as well, housing,
Airport?
We can go on and talk about other examples. And what this comes down to is the importance to all of us of a well-run city, or conversely, the risk we run when the city is not well-run, and how we bear responsibility financially and with some of us in our own lives. So let's talk about the importance of voting.
Well, voting is very important. As you know, in this country we have a democracy. We have a constitutional that gives us certain rights through the Bill of Rights. And we, in this country, the people, are the government. The people that we send to City Hall, the people that we send to Austin, the people that we send to Washington are our representatives. But we are the government. We give them the power to represent us. And so it's very important that everyone votes. In the city of Houston, the elections, typically, we have a population of just over 2.5 million people in the city of Houston. But Jim, sadly, just over 200,000 citizens vote in the city election.
That's less than 10%.
That means that less than 10% of the people will decide the future of the city government in the city of Houston. So it's important that everybody that is registered to vote, please vote. Early voting started back on October 21st and finishes on November 1st. And then they shut down for a few days, reorganized, and then one day, November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th, 2019, is Election Day. So if you did not have an opportunity to vote early, then your last opportunity to vote will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on November 5th, Tuesday. At 7 p.m., the polls close, no more voting, and the votes will be tabulated, counted, and the winners will be made available to the public.
One of the things I find so interesting about my role as co-chair of the International Trade Center of Houston and my partnership and friendship with the founder of that International Trade Center, known as the ITC, Mr. Wei Li, is so many people come to Houston from around the world. Many people, like Orlando, come from communist or hostile countries seeking asylum of one form or another. China, Iran, North Korea. People come to Houston from all over. The clear distinction between our country and others is our democracy and our ability to vote, and therefore choose our leaders, choose our government, and hold our government officials accountable. to me, it is a severe disappointment that less than 10% of our citizens choose to vote. We are giving away the very thing that most people came here to attain or achieve.
Yeah.
So I think Orlando would join me in encouraging everyone to take advantage of their opportunity to vote and to educate themselves before they get into the voting booth. Who are the proper candidates? What are the proper positions to take on issues, etc.
Yeah, and also I always remind people, because the national elections, we elect a president of the United States not directly. We do it through what's called the Electoral College. And so that's why a president may win the popular vote, but not the election. It's because we do it by what's called electors, depending on the population of each state. But I tell the public and my friends in the community, the most important government in your life is the city government. Because when you have an emergency and need a policeman, a Houston police officer will come. If you have a medical emergency, a Houston firefighter or paramedic will come to your house. When your garbage needs to be picked up, it's the City of Houston Solid Waste Department that picks up your garbage. So if you think about it, your interaction with the federal government is very limited. Yes, maybe some of us need a passport, or some of our families need a visa to travel to the United States. But on a daily basis, our interaction is with the local government, and that's the most important government. But yet, people will turn out, half of the population that's eligible to vote will vote in the presidential elections, but less than 10% will vote in the city elections. And so I encourage the community to participate and make it a family affair. You know, when my daughter was very young, I always brought my daughter with me, even though she was 5, 6, 7 years old, to vote, so that she could see that her father was doing his civic duty and participating in the local government by voting. So bring your children, bring your parents, bring your grandparents, and make it a family opportunity to go vote. It only takes a few minutes to vote.
What a great example
Yeah.
of demonstrating to your children what America means and the importance of the future. We talked about the importance of leaving our city, our country, to our children in better shape than we found it, making it better going forward.
Yeah, and it is a great country. It is a great country, and I tell people all this all the time. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from another country, but yet I had the opportunity in America to help lead one of the biggest cities in America. I had the opportunity to run for mayor of the 4th largest city in America. I was treasurer of the 3rd largest county in the United States. My colleagues, Martha Wong, was an immigrant, a child of immigrants from China. She was elected to lead the city of Houston. Many of my colleagues on the city council were children of Mexican immigrants. And so it's a beautiful city where anyone can lead. Everyone has an opportunity. And that's why it's important for our communities to vote and have a say in how this city is run in the future.
Before we let you go, before we end, I want to speak personally. Many of the things that we have spoken about here in the city of Houston and Orlando's motivation to run for the controller of the city to improve the city going forward are exactly the same kind of issues that I feel, and I similarly have decided to run to represent the citizens of Houston in Congress in Washington, because the issues that confront the Houston region, the city and the county, are not only issues that we must face and deal with here, but they are often controlled in Washington because of the scale of the money involved. The big issues that we're talking about here are flooding, more importantly, how to protect against future flooding. Secondly, the energy industry, which is the most significant industry of the world, and we are the capital of that industry around the world. Some people would put that industry out of business. If you put that industry out of business, we might as well close Houston. The third is healthcare, one of the most controversial set of issues and part of the economy. Very few people have proposed how to actually fix what is known as Obamacare. I think we have a special burden to fix things, both for the individual citizens to protect, but also because we are the home to the most significant medical center in the world. We must protect the medical center, which is creating innovation on all aspects of healthcare. And fourth is what we've been talking about, immigration. The United States, and Houston in particular, are beacons of hope for people from all around the world. The United States is a country of immigrants. My grandparents came through Ellis Island, so I can identify with very much first person that Orlando has talked about, but we are also a country of laws, and we must distinguish between the process of legal immigration and the reality, the unfortunate reality of illegal immigration. Resolving those issues are all up to Congress. I want to go be part of that fight so that we can resolve things for the benefit of the citizens of Houston. So, Orlando, I wish you the very, very best. Thank you for being with us here today.
You too, Jim.
Thank you.